Doc, should I get a theragun? I have one of those theraguns. I have one of those theradrills. I have one of those little self-massagers that rapidly, right? Okay, should you get one? Back in the day, Dr. Pearlman would have been like, nah, you don't really need it. It doesn't really address the problem. And by the way, it doesn't address the underlying problem when you have a mechanical injury. However, for the same reasons I just alluded to, for when you have a foam roller, you should 1,000,000% have yourself a theragun. All right, good morning, everybody. We're going to do a quick common questions I get asked and my answer, maybe elaborate a little bit. So here we go. First things first. Doc, should I roll out? Should I get a foam roller? Is a foam roller going to help me? Yes. Foam roller will help you. Knowing how to properly use a foam roller for your quads, hamstrings, calves, lateral muscles, hip flexors, oh my God, and the psoas muscles and the hip flexors and the glute medius and some of those accessory muscles that support you and brace you while you're walking or running or sitting that get tight and short all day. Yes, you need a foam roller. Yes, you need to use it. Not necessarily even on your back, but on every muscle I just mentioned. Number two, Doc, should I get a theragun? I have one of those theraguns. I have one of those theradrills. I have one of those little self-massagers that rapidly, right? Okay, should you get one? Back in the day, Dr. Pearlman would have been like, nah, you don't really need it. It doesn't really address the problem. And by the way, it doesn't address the underlying problem when you have a mechanical injury. However, for the same reasons I just alluded to, for when you have a foam roller, you should 1,000,000% have yourself a theragun. And as a matter of fact, I've seen it clinically work really well for even hip osteoarthritis because it's in there changing the sensitization, right? The way you feel sensation around the affected joint. Careful, Axel. Around the affected joint, increasing mobility of the muscles that support around the joint. And, does a great job on the same muscle groups that I just alluded to with the foam roller, but in a different way for a different reason. And I believe there's science to back this too, that when you are using something like a theradrill to just go straight into the muscle, meaning like just a straight kind of like impact instead of doing like a circular motion or a cross fiber motion, that can actually intentionally stimulate and almost activate a muscle that otherwise would be kind of turned off. That's kind of more in the applied kinesiology realm, or an inactivated muscle then gets turned on. You could think of it as someone in the gym spotting you or cueing you and saying, hey, do you feel this in this muscle? And that way you can begin to maybe activate that glute better. Okay, number three, Doc, should I take supplements? Or what supplements should I take? The answer is yes, absolutely. I believe that almost everybody needs, on an individual level, to find out what they are deficient in and therefore needs to fill in the gaps. Should you be taking a multivitamin? I don't know, probably not. Most of the time a multivitamin doesn't have something with enough of a, a high enough dose of what you might be deficient on to make the tiniest dent in its attempt to fill that deficiency. However, if you take a 1,200 milligram bolus of magnesium, will that help? If you take a 5,000 international unit bolus of vitamin D, will that help? If you take some vitamin E in certain situations, will that help? Vitamin K2, in a bolus, along with, getting enough sun and or vitamin D within your diet, probably. So you just look at like those types of situations. Same thing goes for vitamin C. Even if you're using something like an emergency with a fake sugar. Look, if you're deficient in something, and you can oftentimes equate that figure that out, deduce this by just figuring out like the symptoms. And then you could look up your symptoms directly going through Dr. Google, right? And find out like the most common cause. Oftentimes that's going to be the reason that you find yourself lethargic, or maybe feeling like there's a gap that needs to be filled in your diet, or the reason you're having a certain reaction. Maybe you feel like your allergies are kicking up too much, or you're getting sick a bit too often, or feeling run down too often. whatever the case may be, yes, you should be filling in the gaps with appropriate supplementation that is for you. Number 4, this was funny. Doc, should I do keto, or you think I should do a keto diet? It's more like, people ask me. So here's the thing. If you're going to do a ketogenic diet, I just want you to be aware of a whole bunch of very important things. Number 1 is, what are your goals? And number 2 is, it really is a lifestyle. Because as my good friend Russ Powell will say, and also Kat Tissio, right? Sorry, Kat. The only diet or nutrition that works for you is the one that is sustainable. So, yeah, I mean, look, if you want to go keto, you better be ready to make that a lifestyle. I went 2 years, and even prior to the 2 years, the keto, like strict keto, less than 10 to 20 grams of carbohydrates a day, within 6 to 8 months, I was experiencing pretty severe dehydration and magnesium and electrolyte deficiency. It was affecting my kidneys. It was affecting my bodily system, so to speak, and it could very well be one of the reasons that I had such a devastating injury when I was training so hard. Now, am I saying that you can't, there's plenty of people that train hard, plenty of people that have success on a sustainable ketogenic lifestyle. Some of them are probably have a need, like they absolutely, right, they're optimally limited or optimally limiting within that realm of eating. And oftentimes there are days I feel like that is the way that I have to eat. But then I, through this run streak, my personal run streak, I have done swimmingly well, though my body is a little, plumpier, and I'm carrying a little bit more, chunk in the midsection than I would even like. But it's done fine with much more carbohydrates. But I have to have that exercise, very often, constantly, right? Daily exercise, and be very active to kind of combat the lethargy with that exercise having an insulin-like effect. But that's a whole other topic. So just understand what you're getting yourself into when you start a ketogenic lifestyle. Other than that, maybe you could use it short term and come out of it very carefully, weaning back onto carbohydrates to see a tremendous amount of weight loss. I'll tell you, it doesn't happen the second time around. If a lot of people are always like, hey, I'm going back on keto, and they have a terrible time. Almost nobody can do it to lose weight, per se, if you put a lot of it back on. You can't really use it again to lose the weight, because something comes up called, physiologic insulin resistance, where the fat cells then have a really hard time dealing with how to utilize energy appropriately and then burn that fat again, or go back to being fat as the primary source of energy. That's a whole other topic. I'm hoping to do a podcast actually with Russ Powell or Kat again, maybe even Mark Preisman. I mean, just various people we could sit down and like really dive deep into the science and hopefully not lose you and myself in the process. Okay. All right. Gone on long enough. Hope this video was informative. Let's see where we cut it off here. Guys, until next time, thanks for tuning in. It's Dr. Pearlman.